Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Welcome to the Public Sector Show by Tech Table. Super excited. We have Bob Leek, the CIO for Clark County, Nevada, on today. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thanks, Joe. Really happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. And I emphasize the Nevada piece because I met someone who was the CIO of Clark County that was not in Nevada. It was in Oregon or Washington. And they told me that was the most common, when they talk to vendors, it is the most common mistake. They're like, wrong Clark County. So there are two of you out there. Just, you probably knew that, but
yeah, there's a total of 12 Clark counties, and I got a solicitation yesterday from someone that said, we can help your Clark County in Ohio do better. And I thought, didn't do a lot of research on that one.
Oh, wow. That's pretty funny. Learn something new every day. Clark County in Ohio. Love it.
Yep.
We've had the chance. This has been a long time coming. And just for the audience, just to back the truck up a little bit, we had Nadia Hansen come on. Maybe, what was it, like a hot 3 months after you got hired or something like that? Or
That's right. Yeah, that was a little over 4 years ago. Yep.
And so super excited to have both Bob here and have an update on Clark County, how Clark County's doing. And for those who weren't at InfoTech Live, we got to connect again, and you gave a great little teaser during the kickoff kind of keynote, but I'm excited that we have you for the next hour. For those who don't know you, Bob, around the nation, just because we cover higher ed and some of the different verticals in public sector, could you just give us just a quick intro on yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joe. So I serve as the Chief Information Officer here at Clark County. I've been here 4.5 years. I moved here from Portland, Oregon. I'd spent 20 years in Portland and had been the CIO there for Multnomah County. Also worked for Kaiser Permanente for 10 years in human healthcare. And that's important because I worked for Banfield, the pet hospital, which is pet healthcare, for a handful of years before that. And this is usually my test question for audiences. I can gauge people's age by also sharing that I worked for Egghead back in the late 90s and early 2000s. We were probably the first real at-scale .com online retailer as we transitioned from the days of brick and mortar stores into the .com world, and got my training and education in how fast the world works, working for a .com back at that time. And I've been in technology for most of my career, been in leadership roles for most of that time, and really do appreciate now being in the public sector and being here in Clark County. We have a little town in our borders, Las Vegas. People tend to know us by that. But people in Paris, France don't say, oh, we're going to go watch the Formula One race in Clark County. They're coming to Las Vegas, and right outside of my window, I can see the strip from where I am, and really love being in this area now.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you said Egghead. How do you go from, what's the short story from like Egghead to public sector? So you're in private sector. Where does that jump happen?
Yeah, I worked at Egghead during a time of transition. This was the beginning of the .com world. And Egghead was trying to do two things at the same time. We both know the organizations that are successful. So we were trying to be an online marketplace to sell other people's products through our brand and name recognition, because we had a name recognition that was equivalent to like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and so forth. Everyone knew Egghead in the technology world. And the successful organization that figured all that out, we now know as Amazon. But we also had a very strong auction presence, and we were able to buy products and then put them up for auction. And we know the organization that was really successful at doing that, we know it as eBay. And so Egghead was trying to do what Amazon does and what eBay does at the same time. And it was a brilliant 3 or 4 years worth of work that we did. Went through some venture capital money and ended up just not being able to cross the finish line with that transition, which gave me an opportunity to pursue other paths with other organizations. Left Egghead, went to Banfield, the pet hospital, and then to Kaiser Permanente. And Kaiser's largest department was the health department. This is in Portland, Oregon. And so I had an underpinning in health technology with electronic medical record systems and the solutions that Kaiser uses to deliver healthcare to the public. And an opening happened with Multnomah County. And The largest department in Multnomah County was the health department. And so that's the group that really allowed me to leverage my background in history to get a position as the deputy CIO in Multnomah County. And then through succession planning was able to step into the CIO role after that and expand my role to include facilities and strategic planning and the fleet there at Multnomah County. And this career journey that many of us find ourselves on, luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. And so I feel really lucky that I've had this career journey, and now it's ended up with me here in this area doing this role for Clark County.
I always love hearing the stories of how people get into public sector, mainly because when I meet people for the first time, they always ask me, Joe, how the heck did you end up in public sector? It's like the number one question I always get. So I'll leave that. You could go to techtables.com. And when you subscribe on the email list, the landing page on the next one, I just recorded a video of it because so many people asked me. So I just recorded it, which gets quite a number of views. Speaking of Las Vegas, I was telling you off camera before we started recording, my wife I have not seen her or my daughter in the last, I don't know, it's been maybe a little over a week now, because they initially went to the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere with my sister-in-law and her daughter. And then now the girls are on some road trip in Arizona right now. Hopefully they will come back to us soon because the boys are missing the girls. Yeah, but I love what you said about no one refers to it as Clark County. They just refer to it as Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's fine. We accept that.
Yeah. So we got a number of just really great topics that we're going to dive into. When we met for our intro call, you just covered, I don't want to say your whole portfolio, but it was a pretty strong showing of your portfolio. Let's dive in first to what I just call AI implementation and strategy. As you break this down, so Clark County's, so your budget is about 370 million. And you mentioned about having 20 AI pilots currently running. How are you ensuring that these pilots align with the actual business outcomes rather than, this was just in the Wall Street Journal, maybe yesterday morning, Walmart had recently announced that they'd built too many AI agents. Things are starting to get crazy, confusing, and now they're moving to simplify. Did you talk about actually aligning to the outcomes?
I think until a couple of years ago, it's not that AI hasn't existed and that we all haven't experienced it, right? Any Google search is an AI engine that Google developed. And the opportunity that happened with OpenAI and the release of ChatGPT has started us down this path. And now there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways to look at AI. So for us, AI is a how and not a what. We're not doing AI. We do hundreds of services that we provide to the public. And what we want to do is apply AI for better outcomes. And that means that we have to evaluate and understand what are all the outcomes that we have around our public services and measure those. Issuing a business license, you can't get a business license from anyone other than a county government in our case. We work with the cities that are inside of the borders to make sure that if you're crossing jurisdictional boundaries, that your business license is accurate and complete and correct. And so how do we apply AI so that we issue business licenses faster and more accurately? That's the principle that we take, is AI is a how. And so we talk with all of the departments and we go through what are the core success measures of the work that you do. And we collect all of that information, those metrics. And then we have a conversation that says, what could we do in applying technology and now in applying AI to make those outcomes better for your department? So your question was around how do we ensure that we're going to achieve those outcomes? That's where we started, is what are the outcomes? Now, there are some cool AI things that are out there. We're going to skip over doing chatbots. We really don't have any chatbots within our organization. And it's because it was really hard to do chatbots pre-AI. Right? You had to think of all the questions that anyone would ask, all the permutations of those questions, and then all the answers that you would need and permutations of those answers, and put all that into some type of structured data capability. With AI, we're going to skip that, and we're going to be working on a digital assistant for our website so that you can come to the website and ask in natural language, what is it that you're looking to do? Not only that, but to do that in multilingual capabilities and potentially with some options related to what kind of digital assistant would you like to interact with so that you could change the persona and the look. Do you want an antagonistic person to work with, or would you like a really helpful person to work with? And I think growth in these AI technologies is just going so fast that an organization like Walmart, as you alluded to, that made these investments in a lot of different, and the term is agentic solutions, I think we're taking a much more measured and cautious approach, and not cautious because we don't believe in the technology, but because we want to make sure that we're good stewards of the public's dollar, that the investments we make, that we predict that they're going to be successful and beneficial, and that we don't just chase the technology. And I talk to people that we're a close follower. We're not going to be on the bleeding edge. I love it when other organizations, and you and I know a lot of people in our circle, right? Without name dropping folks, King County, Maricopa County, all those leaders there. I love it when they go first, because then we can learn from the lessons learned and apply these solutions in a way that's predictive of success. And there will be places where we go first as well. And so by collaborating together, we're taking a look and seeing what all this AI stuff is. And then the AI leadership in local government and the public sector is really being led and championed by the GovAI coalition that Khalid started out of Santa Clara. We're a member of that group. There's 700 of us, and I think it's growing now, maybe over 1,000 people that are involved in that, and really trying to work on setting standards and trying to figure out what is AI going to mean in the public sector. And at the end of the day, for us, it's how do we improve what we do, what we already do? And that serves as the kind of the core foundational approach for us.
I really like that, especially when we talk about agentic AI, right now you can see, okay, there's some promising aspects of this, but promising aspects goes in the somewhat someday fun bucket. And then there's okay, here's where we are today. Because there's a difference between prototyping something, even getting a website up like Unlovable or Replit right now, where you can just spin up a website in natural language processing, and it's awesome. It's a ton of fun. I was doing this with my daughter for an entrepreneurship homework assignment. And then we're deploying this to millions of people, right? The scale is different. You can't necessarily go at the lightning speed at scale because there's just so many issues. Everyone's using the word agentic right now, but if you think about behind the scenes, what that means is it's going to try and take an action on your behalf. But what does that mean for your entire county or city? And what happens if it takes a wrong action, right? Where's the governance involved in that? How do you think about that? And I think you can test in a small scope, but I think rolling out super fast can become a nightmare if you don't really think through all of the implications of that when you've got such a large body of people and residents and tourists that are coming through, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, love what you said. And shout out to our friends in Maricopa County. We just had Aaron again on the podcast, and they're innovating and they're doing a blast. And so, yeah, we can definitely collaborate together, get those lessons learned. Wanted to dive a little bit deeper. I think you had mentioned to me that there are 30 different languages spoken in Las Vegas. Talk a little bit more about the practical applications that you're seeing for this right now.
Yeah, and I've shared that one of the most exciting things I think that's happening with AI is language translation capabilities and language translation services. And the state passed a law a couple of years ago now, last legislative session, that we had to do business in English, Spanish, and Tagalog, Filipino. And we had to do that in certain areas with certain transactions and certain documents like board agendas and those sorts of things. And so we started to work on that. But we recognize that this area speaks a number of different languages. 30 is probably not a precise number, but it's representative of how diverse the population is here in Southern Nevada. And so we started to look at solutions around language translation services. So we just launched our new website, clarkcountynv.gov. We transitioned from a legacy system onto Adobe's Experience Manager. One button click will change the language on the website so that you can begin to read the website in a language that you're familiar with, which is great from a navigation perspective, right? It doesn't go all the way deep enough to say, okay, the application for a business license is now available in multiple languages. But that's the next step that we're going to take. And so that we can meet our constituents and the people that need services from us where they want to be met. So one of those is written, right? All of our forms, our documents, the interaction that we have digitally, we want to be able to do that in the language that they would prefer to operate with. And then seamless transition back to, because we're a predominantly English speaking employer, that we can translate it back into a language that we can use to process whatever those next steps are. But the real promise, I think, is in real-time language translation. I know we're science fiction geeks, and we have always appreciated that idea of the universal translator, the earpiece that lets us hear in the language that we want to hear, and the other individual be able to do that as well. And there are organizations that have developed that. I saw an ad just the other day. I know that Beats is working on this and so forth. I think Jabra has some solutions that are out there already. And so we are going to be piloting and working with some real-time language translation services. One of those is to put on a counter 2 iPads sized. They're tablets. I don't mean to say that they're just iPads. They're tablets. They go back to back, and we choose the language that we want to speak in. And what we'll display on the other side is the language that the person that's interacting with us wants to read and hear it in. Real-time language translation capabilities right on a counter. Clark County School District is deploying these in their administrative offices because obviously they're dealing with parents. The teachers and the administrators want to talk to the parents about how great their kids are doing, or if their kids are in a little bit of trouble, be able to have that conversation to come up with some type of a plan related to their behavior or their support that they need. We can now do the same thing across our counters. So we're deploying those for counter-based interaction. And then one of our use cases is with the coroner. When the coroner goes out to these horrible situations where there's a car accident or something's happened, they need to interview witnesses and to be able to collect all that information. And so we're going to deploy a handheld version of that same capability to the coroner's team so that when they're out in the field, they can eliminate a barrier, which is that communication barrier, and gather richer information and richer content and context or whatever that event is that they're dealing with. And then the third, with the same solution, the third is it's a broadcast solution. So in our boardroom, our commissioners tend to operate in English, but you can sit in the audience and through a non-app download, so just a connection to the internet, choose the language that you want to hear and listen to the dialogue that the board is participating in. And I always envision the UN with everybody with their headphones on and people in the back translating everything. It's the equivalent of that. And so for the meetings, whether that's the board meeting or the planning commission or other important public meetings that we have, the ability to connect with people with real-time language translation services, it's one of the most bullish things that I'm on with respect to applying AI. And all of that is AI driven. And I think it really does eliminate a barrier and a constraint in operating with the people that we're trying to provide services to.
There are a lot of gems that you published there. And really, you said you were really bullish on this. And I think if you haven't traveled out of the country before, you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. But when you travel I've been to Europe, the Philippines, Japan, Korea, South America, you will probably not know every language. And so first thing you land at the airport and sometimes just directions to where the train is or how to navigate. Great use case. Las Vegas, obviously great use case just because there's so many tourists coming through. And then what I really liked, I don't know if everyone caught what you said, but you took one solution and got it deployed to at least 3 other use cases. I think it's very smart. So you just didn't spend all this energy just on one isolated use case, but you got one to drive home 3 other ones without multiplying the work on your team is great. I'm sure you thought about that, but that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm happy to share. People can get in touch with me and we can talk about what we're doing. There's dozens of companies that are coming forward with this stuff now. And I think, again, tying in this use of AI to the services that we provide to make it better is what we're looking for. And I remember taking Spanish in school, a couple of other languages, and the most important phrase when you're traveling is, where's the bathroom? And being able to now do that in 170 languages, I think is pretty powerful as you're traveling around.
Yeah. Even I'm spitballing right now in real time, but I'm thinking even taking all of the county or even within the city, taking all of the transcript data from city council meetings or county meetings, and you can also translate that. So I want to go where I wanted to go before we wrap up the AI piece of it was the AI augmented workforce. Love to hear just from you. I don't see AI replacing folks who are going to use it. And so I think there are a lot of great use cases today, even without it being insanely intelligent, for the workers to help just augment this. This could be writing better emails, communicating better. But I'd love to hear from you Where are you seeing this really augment your workforce?
I think about this in kind of three buckets. So one is that there are roles that we perform that are never going to be replaced by AI. They're going to be enhanced. And two that I think of all the time is law enforcement and firefighting, right? Those are services that we provide. And we're not going to have AI agents doing that type of work. Now, maybe we can arm firefighters to arrive at a site with more information than they otherwise would. This structure likely has paint, and therefore that's a hazard. And so helping, again, augmenting the services we provide through AI enhancements, I think that's one way to think about the workforce. The other, on the other extreme, I'm starting to toy with this a little bit, is what if on our org chart, we actually have a position for an AI employee, an AI worker? And an area that could work in would be, let's say we have a role around a customer service agent who primarily answers the phone and answers questions. And that for whatever reason, we have some open positions. They tend to be a little tough to recruit and hire for. But what if we were to take that position and rethink it in terms of what if that position could be an AI agent? And right on the org chart that we make the AI agent a part of the workforce. So they're a teammate. They're someone that we work with. We find out what the workflows are. Where do you do your job? Where does that transition to one of our staff members? What does that look like? And I think that this is something I think that's emerging in the realm of thought that says embrace AI and have it be part of the team so that it's not seen as a replacement. It should be an augment. And so that's what we use the term AI for us. It's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. So we are working on augmented intelligence solutions. And let's say we have a dozen customer service rep positions that are open that we can't find people to fill. Let's think about the possibility around applying an AI agent in that realm and making it part of the team. And then the middle component is the skills and the capabilities that everyone seems to need to have as we grow and more AI comes to bear. But this has been true for us for a long time. Digital skills or technology skills in the workforce has continued to grow. I know that we still have some employees who talk about, I don't use email because I don't know how to use email. And for many of us, email is just a core part of what we do all day long. But the reality is that some of these technology skills are still seen as they're desired, but they're incumbent upon people performing their role. And so with AI coming along, what does the skill need to be? And then how do we enhance or change the job descriptions to further acknowledge that technology literacy, technology capability, even at beginning levels, and maybe in some cases in intermediate levels, are just an important part of this. So we're starting to talk about and look at the hundreds of positions that we have and asking ourselves, how is AI going to impact those positions? And then what do we need to think about in terms of the skills needed for the people that we're hiring so that they can use these capabilities? We're a Microsoft shop. We're going to roll out Copilot and have that become a core part. And I know my peers in San Francisco just got a lot of kudos for having rolled it out to 30,000 City of San Francisco employees. We're following, again, lessons learned, lots of training that's needed, a users group, an affinity group, the reference materials, all those sorts of things. So let's do it right. But we're really excited about how we can leverage AI to do the work that we do in better ways.
Yeah, so a couple things I'm thinking about too, especially on the digital literacy piece, is even the workforce today of how when people submit their resumes, it used to be proficient in Microsoft Office, proficient in this. Now it's going to be, for the upcoming generation, right, it's going to be proficient in AI prompting, proficient in building a custom GPT on ChatGPT, right, or something like that, or proficient in Claude projects, I don't know what it is, or Copilot, right? So it's very interesting because especially when I work with kids, like high school kids and a high schooler in my house, and having these conversations right now of part of it, Annabelle is thinking about, hey, what does college look like? And I'm thinking to myself, what does college look like when she leaves, right? Mm-hmm. This is now 6 years later into the future, and which is pretty fun to start thinking about what skills do you need and what makes college important, and even for adults right now. And I think right now the stat is there are 6 generations of people in the workforce all at one time. And there's going to be some folks who are retiring. I just had a podcast with the CIO for the Washington State Cannabis and Liquor Board. Great guy, George Williams. He was telling me that they had to hire, just as a contractor, a gal who was maybe 70, 75 years old, just to keep this one thing alive till they could migrate. But I'm done after that. And the world is just moving where I think the tech is moving, the people are moving. But I did see that with San Francisco. I'd love to get the lessons learned on rolling out 30,000. It looks a little heavy. I love the headline number, but I think there's going to be a lot of folks who need training on that front. And who knows, maybe Microsoft is deploying lots of actual human people to help train them up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a lot easier when I do the podcast virtually for me to write a bunch of notes down because my brain is just constantly swirling. Very hard to do this in person. But one of the reasons I love it is I just have an actual notebook next to me and I just love jotting down your thoughts. My last one on the org chart piece, I was just catching a podcast, this maybe a couple of weeks ago, but it was with Mark Benioff, who is the chairman and CEO of Salesforce. I have no affiliation, but him and then another guy, Jason Lumpkin from SaaStr. And yeah, they were just talking about the future of what an AI employee looks like. And I think I love that you put this on here, like actually incorporating it on to the org chart. I think the great use case, customer service agent, and is one example, but I think making it less scary for people. Oh, this agentic thing isn't going to come take me out, take my job. But hey, no, we're just going to be working. We're going to be better together. We're going to be working together. So,
yeah. And it has to be done with intent, and you have to invite people into that, and you have to accept that people are on a different curve, right? Those that are really scared about losing their jobs because of AI, that's a different conversation than those that are excited about how do I get rid of the stuff I hate doing, like authoring emails, and make an agent that does email responses 70% of the time. Think about all the great time that I can then get back to do all the creative work and the strategic work that I really wish that I was doing. And that's just a personal use case of mine. And I'm watching people that are taking these agents' capabilities and really getting a whole set of work off their plates so that they can do that value added work. And that's the way that I describe what we're going to do with AI is we want people to do the value added work and the rote, mundane, repeatable stuff that some people have on their plates. Let's figure out whether there's a better way to unleash your creativity in other things. So It's a very intentional approach. It's scary. It has to be done with sensitivity and empathy and understanding, but it's also inevitable. We've got to make our way through these conversations.
I could go all day, but I love what you said about the value add piece. And I think sometimes we lose sight when we are really in the technology of, especially in public sector, there are so many different types of agencies, health and human services to you name it, police, fire. And not everyone is in the tech like 24/7. And so stepping back going, okay, this person's perspective is actually probably pretty valid with where they live. Let me enter into their world. Could be a caseworker, right? Enter into their world to understand. And then going back to what we talked about, focusing on that outcome, that business problem, and then figuring out, hey, what can we maybe apply or not apply? So citizen-centered technology design. So when we met, you had talked about, you focus on 4 personas: visitors, employees, business owners, and residents. How has this shift changed the way you evaluate when you implement technology solutions from maybe your previous history working in healthcare, working at Egghead? And did I get Egghead right? Did I get it?
Yeah.
I just caught to my age. I'd just love to know, like, those are your 4 personas here and kind of how you think about that when deploying technology projects.
I'm a big steward of simple frameworks. And so I was thinking about the fact that we have 8,500 employees and 40 departments. And every department is uniquely designed to deliver its service. But at the end of the day, for a county like ours, which has 2.3 million people and 90,000 businesses, and then around 50 million visitors that come through, and then our 8,500 employees, I just had this epiphany one day where I was writing down and I was noodling around on some stuff. And I was like, so if we rethink our service models to deliver solutions to those 4 personas. And a lot of this is in design thinking. And I've had the benefit of having worked with some great organizations in the past around user-based design and those sorts of principled approaches. I thought, what if we start to center our work around this approach? And we're not the first to think about this. There are leaders around the country and local jurisdictions who have built portals, and they've really taken this model and said, we really want to make it easier for people to consume the services that we provide. And so here we're centering ourselves around these four personas. Our employees, obviously, we directly need to create a great place to work, make it easy to work here, access to the things that they need. We have a pretty robust remote work option for many roles so that people can work from a secondary work location, usually their house. So the employee persona, we're doing work around that, and we're centering some technology solutions around that. And then the visitor persona is really with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, the airport, the city of Las Vegas, the resort corridors, and so forth. So what can we do to create this great opportunity for people that when they come here, that they have a great experience? What can we do with technology to make that better? And QR codes and easy access to discounts for like rideshare programs, restaurants. You think about search engine optimization. I want my restaurant to be at the top of the list. No, I want mine to be. What could all of that look like to create this great experience? And so that work is happening. But the two that we're centered on are business owners and residents. And so business owners here interact with 4 to 8 different departments through the life of owning a business and running a business here. And so what if we rethink and do user-centered design with business owners so that when they come to clarkcountynv.gov, whether that's on a mobile device or on our website through a laptop or some other larger device, tablet, and so forth, that we create this experience for them that makes it easy for them to do business with us. 1. 2, that we add identity management to that. So we do want you to log into our website, because when you do, we can present you with more information. Oh, based on the characteristics of your organization, did you realize that these economic development dollars were available? Or we're trying to target growth in a particular area of the region. Have you thought about expanding your business into this area of the region? And so in the same way that we're inundated with the recommendation engine on Amazon, one of my favorite places to shop, why can't we do that in the public sector too and bring these programs that people are eligible for to the forefront? And then when you think about that from a resident perspective, the 330,000 families that we support through family and social service programs, the folks that we support through juvenile justice, the business license area or the permitting area in terms of expanding on your house or doing projects at your house, what if we flip the paradigm and we become proactive in a lot of that? So that was the underpinning behind this thought that said, let's identify these 4 personas, and then the investments that we make should enhance the experience that those personas have, and do customer journey mapping and invite business owners to participate with us. When we design programs, we want the programs to actually be effective to the people that consume those programs. So let's invite them to be part of that design process. So a lot of this has just started with us. It's been a concept, but we're really starting to see it take hold. And it lets us rethink how we've organized and designed our own service models, so that instead of after you get a business license and you say, okay, now I need permits in order to open my space, we can't help you with that in the business license department, go call them. Let's rethink what that journey would look like for that business owner. And let's make it really seamless for them to go down the hall or virtually to the next department and take those next steps and do all that in a really thoughtful way, but in a proactive way. So that's the idea that we had around the personas.
I love that. I talk about this quite a bit on the podcast, but I consume services in different versions of me, Joe Tosti. So I'm a consumer of everyone else, like of the DMV, but I also consume business services too as a business owner. I'm curious, you can punt the question if you don't want to answer it, just very quickly, and you don't have to say anything about any vendor partners you're thinking about, but
Sure.
the identity management piece is super interesting, because when you are a business owner, you file stuff at the state and other types of entities that you operate in. How are you and Tim collaborating together to try, even if you're not there yet, but as you guys are thinking about this, Nevada is not a massive state in the sense of like California, where there's 50 something million people, but I think you guys have a pretty great relationship, which is somewhat rare, between kind of the state CIO and then the largest county in this state. Could you maybe just talk about the identity management and even just the collaboration between the two of you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing Tim into this. I was trying to find an entry point for that. Tim Galusi is the state CIO. He's doing some incredible work at the state level. And there's 3.5 to 4 million people across the state. 2.5 million of them live here in Clark County. And so I think it's really important that the state and Clark County work together wherever we can, because it's a predominance of the population, the economic engine and so forth. And that's no disrespect to the Reno, Carson City area and Washoe County and that area, northern Nevada. But the work that Tim and I are doing is that we have an agreement that there are certain topics. Identity management is one. Cybersecurity is another, a statewide approach. And we've coined this term One Nevada as an approach. And so when we're thinking about making investments, we touch base with each other. And identity management is one area where we believe, and many states have already done this. Again, Arizona is a little bit ahead of us. Missouri rolled out a statewide identity, that we need to make a very strategic investment in identity management. And maybe 5 or 8 years ago, we would have said, okay, you're going to log in and then all services, state, county, city, tribal, are all going to be available on one massive website. States tried that and it really didn't work all that well. Now, with modern APIs and the capability to do integration, that if we can get you to log in, no matter where you log in, on the state system or one of the state agencies, DMV, DOT, et cetera, or at the county level or at the city level, and that we've shared this identity management and identity verification, because that's really the piece. Logging in is one piece, but that you are who you are, that's the really important part. And if we can do that in a collaborative way and roll that out in a very seamless way, so that when you log in, that we know who you are, and we begin to tune the service models underneath that, I think that's the next step in terms of being a resident of the state and having access to all of these services in a proactive way that helps you navigate all those service structures. That's both the promise and the tactic that we're going to take on. And there are some solutions that are out there. We could start anywhere: voter registration database, DMV database, the business license database. There are other publicly accessible databases, along with the services that have come along, like ID.me, that the prevalence of that as a solution is also out there. But it's less about which solution provider we're going to work with and more around how are we going to ensure that as we take these next steps, that we're doing that with the resident at the center of that model, or the business owner at the center of that model.
Yeah, it's a fascinating study, work problem. Also, same thing, like I've got to log in for the IRS and pay taxes. And it's so weird now that I've been in public sector doing this for 4 years. All I'm thinking about is, what does the experience of this look like across the board? If you're a business owner, you don't actually pay taxes on a number that's like a real number. You estimate what you think you should pay, which is crazy because you just go into this black hole and then communicate with the IRS. They send you letters of, we're charging you interest and you underpaid us by $100 or something random like that. And constantly thinking about what is the experience from top to bottom. And obviously, as a business owner, I'm thinking about this, but I was thinking about had a great conversation with this guy, Dan Texar, for Texas. He's working on a huge modernization project. And so, yeah, just figuring out how are people tackling this, how from identity to you actually getting the persona right. And I love what you said about the recommendation engine piece.
Yep.
It's so good. I want to know, as a business owner, when there are tax breaks, things I should be made aware of, that it's just impossible to find otherwise. You nailed that. Want to cover cybersecurity. You briefly mentioned about it, but the number that you gave was that Clark County fends off about 4 million cyber attacks a day. And I wanted to just, the nuance a little bit that you brought up when we met was best of breed versus best of fit. Can you just talk about how you think about that with Clark County?
Yeah, I think this term best of breed has been something that's been around for a long time. And my experience has said that best of breed ends up being the most expensive set of options. And that instead we've taken a best of fit approach. And so we really know who we are and what we're trying to do and what our footprint is. We have about 72,000 devices total across all the different types of devices that can exist within end user devices, all the way through the network, servers, and so forth. And that's who we are. And we're not a multinational company. We're all regionally based. And when we talk to the solution providers, we want to make sure that we're saying, here's who we are. And this is what success looks like to us. And some features and capabilities for multi-location companies that are spread out all over the United States, yeah, that theoretically makes sense, but we're probably overpaying for those capabilities when all we need is something that works in Southern Nevada or through our SaaS relationships that we have with SaaS solution providers. So this best of fit approach allows us to evaluate potentially more options and then narrow those options down to the one that's best for us. And in the realm of cybersecurity, there is a lot of consolidation that's happening, right? The one platform approach, single pane of glass. We've heard that for 15 years now. I think those are all great. And I really applaud what's happening in the solution provider community. But for us, we're always going to look and say, we need a privileged access management solution. Here's what success looks like for us. Let's navigate that landscape. And if we have an existing provider that also has that, of course, we're going to look at that. But if the rightest privileged access management solution is a one-off product that integrates with that single pane of glass concept, we're going to look at that too. And that's been our approach. And in cybersecurity, as fast as things are moving, and the fact that our number one goal is to maintain uptime and availability of our systems, it is the thing, and probably always will. It's the thing that keeps me awake at night is, are we ready? And what have we done in business continuity planning, disaster preparedness, and then can we recover when something happens?
That's really great. Going back to, we were talking about offline on the intro call about the number of cybersecurity vendors that are just acquiring each other. And I was laughing because I think today I saw that Palo, again, no skin in the game, is acquiring CyberArk for whatever, $20 billion. And so I was thinking about our podcast that was coming up, and I was laughing that, there's another one that's just going to get swallowed up in the ecosystem.
Yeah, at least for us, that means we'll be able to consolidate from two solutions to one. So that's great.
Yeah, love it. Want to touch on leadership, and then one other topic as we close out. So you mentioned to me that you had filled half of your 33 leadership roles through internal promotions over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We'd just love to hear your leadership philosophy around internal promotions and what you're looking for as you're training up the next generation.
Yeah, this is something that I'm really proud of. And I think the legacy of this was set by prior leaders and then people that I've worked for. And it goes like this. So we need to be really clear and understand what it is that we need in terms of the roles that we need to have based on where we're going. And those roles evolve as technology evolves, as our mission changes and evolves. That the people that we have, the leadership roles that we have, may not be the ones that we need into the future. So this is always done with a to-be state that's constantly changing. So what is the to-be state? And then what are we doing about that? The second piece is, and this is something that I believe very strongly about, is that everyone should have an individualized development plan. Now, that the development plan could be, I want to retire in 5 years. Okay, that's great. Then let's build a plan to help you retire in 5 years. And what that means is, I'm probably not going to send you to a conference, but what I really want you to focus on is succession planning and knowledge transfer, right? That we want to enhance your existing skills, but we're not going to put you on a project with new things, in it, if that's what your development plan is. But we also have people that want to grow in their technology skills, their technical skills. They want to become technology or technical experts. We have people that want to grow into leadership or the management track, so to speak. We have folks that want to go into project management, and we think that's great. Or we have people in one area of technology that want to change into a different area. Maybe a system administrator wants to become a network person. So we do this at the individualized level. And then from that, we can see some patterns emerge. And one of the patterns that we saw is that we had people that wanted to move into leadership roles. So we have a relatively flat organization. It's probably like a lot, supervisors, managers, and then the executive team. And as we laid out the to-be state of our organization, what we found is that people said, I really think I could be a leader for that particular function or that particular area. And so we worked with them on the skills that are going to be needed in order to be the best candidate for those roles. Everything we do is competitively done. We're competitively recruited. And so we wanted our internal candidates to be the best possible candidate. Why? Because they already know us. They know who we are. They know our culture, our philosophy, our approach. They know their peers. One of the toughest things is to rise above the level of your peers into a leadership role. We wanted to help people with that transition. And so as we did that over the last 3 years, The results are is that we promoted of those roles, about half of them were internal promotions, which is we're really happy and proud about because one, people wanted to do that. Two, we had the positions that were available, and then we set everyone up for success in order to do that. And so I am really proud of the work that we did because what it showed us is that we have a tremendous pool of talent inside the organization that we could bring up into leadership roles, which become influence roles. They become decision-making roles. And because we're all operating off of this shared sense of where we're going, and our technology strategy is on our website, clarkcountynv.gov. You can search for Clark County Technology Strategy. That tells everyone where we're going and to align every individual person into that overall strategy and then bring leadership to bear with that. That's what we've been doing over these past few years.
I love that. Preparing the next generation also against external candidates. I love that. The individual development plan kind of looks like a coach. We have individual development plans.
That's right. Yeah. We need you to stop turning the ball over. Okay, we're going to work with you on really doing bounce passes really well, right?
Yep. Ball faking, not turning the ball over, handling the pressure. Oh, that was a big one at practice this morning. Handling the pressure for the younger guys. So as we wrap this up, I wanted to get a little tactical just in the sense of you've got a lot of great insights. There's some other CIOs that are listening right now who maybe they're getting pulled down right now, Bob. They're trying to keep the lights on, so to speak. Based on everything that we've talked about, what's one conversation that you might suggest that a CIO have with their county manager, the mayor, the county CEO tomorrow to start moving them from the tactical to the strategic?
Yeah, I think this is an evolution that's happening in all kinds of industries. And because I've had the benefit of being in different industries, I know there was a leader at Kaiser one day that said Kaiser Permanente is a technology company that does healthcare. And I thought that was maybe a little bit of a stretch. But the fact is that technology is a pervasive part of everything that we do now. And so the conversation that I would start with, one is self-reflection. And it would go something like this. Do I, as the CIO, do I really know how success is measured in terms of the work that my jurisdiction does? And if I don't, how would I find that out? I know here our county manager has done an effort to refresh the county strategy. What is Clark County about? And now we have 7 strategic priorities. They're named. It was meant to focus our efforts around with our commissioners and the other elected officials. What is it that we intend for the 2.5 million people and the 50 million people that come through here? What is it we intend them to experience? And so as a CIO, I need to be tuned into what does success look like for the organization that I work for. When I was at Egghead, it was margin. How much money can we make and have satisfied customers? When I was at Kaiser, it's how do we do preventive healthcare? Because Kaiser's model is that you don't get sick because you take care of yourself. But if you do get sick, we're going to take really good care of you. In the public sector, my experience has been, how do we create a great place for people to live and work and thrive and enjoy the area that they're in? So that's the first question as a CIO. Do I understand what success looks like for the jurisdiction that I'm in? And once I have that, the second piece of self-reflection. How do I align everything that I'm doing to those successful outcomes? And you're going to find some things that you're doing that don't align to those outcomes. And you should label those maybe in a red, yellow, green, in a yellow. The red areas are things that you're doing that don't align, things that measure success for which you have no projects. And we had one of those. One of our core things is to address homelessness. And then we looked at our IT portfolio and we found that we had very little investment going on in technology related to homelessness. So I label that as a red flag, right? And then we have the alignment things, green. Hopefully there's more green than yellow and red because that means your organization is aligned. Now you can go to the county leadership in our case and say, here's everything we're working on. Here's how it aligns to what you've identified as success, county manager, board, etc., mayor, whoever those leadership individuals are. And here are my suggestions for how we could be more successful. As the technology leader, here are the investments I think we should be making. As a technology leader, I want to stop investing in the 7th different firewall tool. Let's live with the one we have, and let's take that money and apply it to a data scientist that can help us understand how to do interventions with juveniles so that they don't commit crimes when they're 14 years old. That's the conversation for the CIO to have. And that means that you have to build relationships. You've got to understand what your organization is and how it works. You've got to know the department leaders that you're working with. You need that proverbial seat at the table, but you can create that seat yourself by taking a business-based approach. And I think that's the crux of that conversation, is to move beyond the tech, the IT job. This is why I talk about that I lead a technology organization. I don't lead an IT organization. IT is what it has always been: networks, servers, the IT stuff. Technology is what we leverage to improve the lives of people in our community. And so that's that conversation. And if you're not having that, I don't think it's too hard to start to do that. The role of the CIO has grown to a point where we tend to be one of the largest cost centers, right? Most of us are not revenue centers. And so we already have an obligation to spend that taxpayer dollar in the best way possible. So let's ask, are we doing that? And be a little vulnerable by doing that.
That was a great wrap up. Same thing in the kind of business sphere ecosystem, how I think about it. I start at the BHAG, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal. What's that vision that you want? I use like Google's OKRs. And so it just puts it in a frame of what's the objective? What are the key results? And it works very well in public sector too. And then from there, I look at, okay, what projects am I working on and how do those align with the weekly goals? And then if there is misalignment, which it happens, right? If you're not constantly having a quarterly reviews or having that time to get away from the day-to-day, but to sit down and actually think, hey, are we aligned on this plan, or are we veering off a little bit? And it's the same thing. That's a really great process to get in. And it sounds very easy. It's just too easy to say, hey, we got too many projects we're working on right now. The strategic work can wait. And then that actually is, I think, a huge mistake, because then you end up getting dragged and doing all the technical work and not the role of the CIO of actually driving the organization forward. So love what you said.
Yeah. And a great mentor of mine, I learned this phrase. It's the CIO sovereignty, right? There are things that we are accountable for: the network, which end user device company that we align ourselves with, the core, the guts of IT. But if that's more than 20% of what you're focused on, you're probably too much of an IT leader and not enough of a business leader. And we're not at 80-20 yet. That's the direction that we're striving to go. And we measure that in terms of the investments that we make, the projects that are on our list, and so forth. But every time we add another 5% in work that we're doing on behalf of the departments, which is where it directly impacts the public, and 5% less in our IT spend because we do stabilize and just the fit for function solutions, that's the direction that we're going. So I don't ask for help with the CIO sovereignty. That's me and my team. The 80% that we do on behalf of the departments, that's where we need to get the help.
I love that. That was fantastic. Bob, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate the conversation today. It was fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I loved it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by Tech Tables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.